Hi everyone, this is my tutorial on how to make a sweater pumpkin. Now I went to my local thrift store and bought a few sweaters that were textured. You see how this is textured? You can get any color you want, and if you can't find the color you want, you can just get some RIT dye and dye a white one like this. Any color you want. But I think that, and it doesn't have to be textured, but I think that these pumpkins are prettier when they're textured. So materials that you need, of course, is a sweater, then scissors, and I used, it's stuck in my pin cushion, but a big needle. And for all the sewing on this, you don't necessarily have to sew, but I think that it holds better and looks better. And I'll get into later where you can sew and where you don't have to. But let's see. You can either use quilting string, or I have this crochet or knitting string. I'm not sure the crochet. Yeah, crochet string. And I got this at the thrift store. But you need a heavier string because in one part of this tutorial, you're going to be pulling to like gather up the material. So you want something that's not going to break. I bought a big bag of polyfill. This is just stuff that you can put in pillows or stuffed animals or any kinds of crafts. And then I went outside and found a couple sticks, one thicker than the other, and I just cut different length stubs, I guess you would call it. And then this is burlap, and this came in a roll at Walmart, and you can use plain burlap, but I had this on hand because I bought it for another project which I didn't complete. I changed my mind on how I wanted to do it. So this has a strip of lace down the center, and for the leaves or petals, I like to cut one out of the lace and then one or two out of the regular burlap. So we'll get into that in a little bit too. So for the sweater, now the way I had to set up this camera to hold it up above me, you might not get everything. I'll try to get the whole, project in the screen. But this is my first tutorial, so bear with me. All right, so if you get a sweater, like I said, I just went to the thrift store. I found a sweater vest, so it don't necessarily have to have sleeves. Some of the tutorials that I seen or was studying to make mine, they would cut along the seam on the sleeve right here and use the sleeve. Now, to me, I think that doesn't leave a wide enough. If you want a little pumpkin, I guess that could work, but then you have a lot of excess on top and bottom. You do want some excess, and I'm going to use the whole sweater eventually, but for right now, to show you this tutorial, we're going to cut from armpit straight across to the other armpit. And we're going to use the bottom portion, the body portion of the sweater. So I'm going to pause and cut it, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we go. I cut along from armpit to armpit, and we can put this aside. And here is the body of the sweater. Now, I can make 2 pumpkins out of this because, you know, I've got the front and back part. So the next thing you want to do is cut up the sides where the seams are and make this 2 separate pieces. Okay? Okay, so I made 2 separate pieces. See? So I'm going to take this top one and put the other one aside. All right, so what we want to do is go ahead and fold it in half, inside out. Turn it inside out, fold it in half. And at this point, it doesn't have to be perfect because the ends are going to be bunched up. But at this point, you can either, I'm going to use a sewing machine, excuse me, but you can hand sew if you don't have a sewing machine. It's going to take longer. But you want to sew just a little seam along the top and down the open side so that the bottom will be left open. Okay? So I'm going to go do that real fast. Okay. So I ran a seam along the top and side. So, and left the bottom open because we're going to turn it inside out. You can mess with it, but we're not done with the bottom. That's where the quilting thread or this crocheting thread that I got is going to be the next step. Guys, please bear with me. This is my first tutorial, so. Okay, so what we're going to do, along the top that we stitched, take your quilting thread or crocheting thread, just a heavy duty thread that's not going to break. And we're going to just like big stitches, loose big stitches all along the top. And you can, if you use the sewing machine, you can like go along the top of the seam that you sewed in here, or, you know, if you hand sewed it, you can go along your sewing line. But what we're going to do, just, oh, I'm sorry. You need to make a big knot at the end of your string so that it doesn't pull through your fabric. And you'll probably have to tie it 3 or 4 times to make it big enough. You're not going to see this part because it's going to be inside. But just keep tying until it's just a big knot. So you don't want to get all the way to the end with this loose stitch, and when you go to pull it, it comes right through the fabric. Then you have to start all over again. All right. So what was that, 4 or 5 times? So see, there's a big knot there. Okay, so I just threaded it a little bit through the needle. So we're just going to loosely, I'm going to run along the seam that I made with the sewing machine. Okay, just big stitches, just all the way down. And what this is going to do, we're going to pull it so that it's bunched up and it gives you a nice kind of rounded base for your pumpkin. So I'm going to finish doing this real fast. Now there are going to be a little bit tricky steps to this pumpkin. And there's different ways that you can finish it. Like the stem, and there's just different ways you can do a lot of steps in this. And instead of pulling this, or running the seam along it and then hand doing a loose stitch like this, I've seen a lot of people or a lot of tutorials, because I was studying tutorials, and when I made the one that I posted on my group sites that I belong to, I liked the idea of sewing it because I think it's just more sturdy and like cleaner, I guess you could say. But the other way that you can do this without having to sew is if you had rubber bands and you could just gather it up and you wouldn't have to sew. I'll show you here in just a minute. Let me get this finished. Okay. So that's just a very loose stitch. So now, if you didn't have a sewing machine, didn't want to hand sew, another way you could do it is just bunch it up and put a rubber band around it, as tight as possible. But like I said, I like to stitch. So what we're going to do, I'm going to flip it over here. What we're going to do is just start pulling so that it bunches up. So you want to pull it as snug as you can, but try not to, pull it too hard to break it. Hence using a sturdy string. So I'm going to wrap it here so it doesn't let loose. I'm just going to go in the fabric to tie this off. Just make like little knots. That's hard to do. Okay. So when the loop comes or makes that loop, I go through the loop and then pull tight. And that'll make your knot. So see, it's all bunched up. Nice like that. I'm just going to make a couple more loops just so it's secure. I know there's a lot of string. I shouldn't use this much. Okay. Through the loop. And pull tight. Whoa! I hope that didn't break off. Well, Okay, I had it secure enough. Okay, so it's going to look like that. Now, we're just going to turn it inside out. And you just see how bunched up it is. Just play with it till you get it where you want. It just makes a nice base for it to, sit kind of flat. So now I'm going to fold that over. And you see inside there. It gives a little bit of weight there too. Okay, so now we start stuffing. Now in some of the tutorials, some of them stuffed them with a mixture of things like, grocery bags, if you have an excess amount of those. I've seen some put beans, dry beans, like probably a half a cup to a cupful to give it some weight, and then put, whatever else, if you have extra fabric. If you wasn't going to use the rest of the sweater, you could probably bunch that up and put it in. But I like the polyfill because I think it's easier to mold, and you can put more in where you want it or anything else. So let me start putting some in. And I'm just going to do little handfuls. Not little, but like that. And I'm going to I know this is round, but I kind of want to put a little handful in each corner. Make like 4 corner type things to get it filled out. Because later we're going to make the rib lines for the pumpkin, and I think it kind of helps with doing that. So I'm just going to keep stuffing, and you don't want to overstuff. You can make it as, soft or full as you want. But you have to remember, if you stuff it too much, you're going to stretch the fabric and you'll see holes in it. So I like to fill mine until it's firm. So I'm going to keep filling this. Like I said, you can use anything you want to fill it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill it. See this seam line, or where the pattern changes, but along that hem line, I guess. I'm going to fill it all the way up to that line. And then, well, I'll show you. We're going to do the same thing we did with the bottom. I got dog hair. And we're going to go on the inside and do the loose stitch all the way around that little line thing there. And then we're going to pull it tight to where it's bunched up like this. And I'll show you an alternative way to do a stem at that point. But let me finish getting this filled. All right. You can kind of go in, if you have a dent or something, you can kind of go in and try to fill that out a little bit more. Just play with it, just get it to where you want it. But it's not going to matter too much because, like I said, we're going to be running string or thread along, you know, the outside of the pumpkin about 4 times to make the ribs. And you don't have to do that, but I'm detail oriented, so I like details. Okay, so this is pretty full. I'm going to bunch it up just to show you. But you see how plump and cute. Okay, now for the top. Some people, or some tutorials, they get twine or leather strap or just, you know, raffia or anything else, and they'll start twisting, you know, closely and make this as their stem. I don't really like that personally. You can do what you want, but in another tutorial, what I saw, I liked of it. So I guess I'll take the rest of the string that broke on the bottom here. And again, you want to make a big knot. I'm sorry if this is dragging on. I know how to pause, but I think this doesn't take that long to have to pause the video, and I'll get better in my next videos. Alright, probably about 4 times will do it. Okay. So like I said, like on the inside, do you see where the pattern changes in the fabric? Just go along that line and start your string here. Pull it all the way through. And I'll go ahead and pause it to do this. I'm not going to bore you, but just do the loose stitch, like an inch or so. Just big loose stitch. And do it all the way around. And then I'll come back when I get done. Okay. So I've ran a loose stitch all the way around the seam line, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the bottom, and I'm just going to start pulling to where it bunches up. And I want to be careful. The bottom one broke, but that's when I was making the knots to tie it off, so that was good. All right. All right, so you bunch it up as much as you can. Then you want to tie it off. Hold it tight. Tie it off and make a couple knots so it don't go back or open back up. So, and don't worry about the excess string here because you're not going to see it. Because this next trick, we are going to tuck all this inside. And you don't have to worry about this part if you went ahead and kept all this together and, you know, put your choice of twine or leather or anything else to make the stem. But this is the way I did my first one, and I just think it looks neater. Okay, that's a bigger hole than I had before, but we can fix that, I think. The first one I made, the hole was only about that big after I pulled it together, so I think maybe my string got caught up on something. So I'm just going to run a couple more stitches just to gather it a little bit tighter. No particular way. I'm just gonna like try to stick it in there. Pull that. Stick it. Just do a couple. So I'm sorry if this is confusing, but it's a lot easier if you can get the hole as little as possible as far as stuffing things inside of it, like your branch or cork or whatever you decide to stick in it. That hole's still pretty big. I'm just going to run a few more stitches just to pull it together more. Okay, sorry for the confusion. All right, I think that's little enough, so we'll put some knots in there. This is just for tutorial purposes, I guess. It don't have to be perfect. You can make it perfect, work on it a little bit more, but first one came out really good. And I might be rushing a little bit because I'm doing a tutorial and don't want to keep you too long. Okay, so I made my knots. Now on my first pumpkin that I made, this was tricky because, like I said, the hole was smaller. But what you want to do at this point is just start tucking. Go around in a circle and start tucking the fabric inside. And like I said, I like doing it this way. Okay, so I don't know what I'm going to do about that. So normally the hole was much smaller. It was real hard to tuck the fabric in. And the piece of wood that I put in there, you know, I really had to like twist it as I was putting it in, and it fit in there real snug, real good. So we'll work with this just so I can show you. All right, so this next step, we're going to make the ribs. Now, you can still work with this to make it rounder, but it's not going to matter too much because we're making the ribs and we're going to be pulling tight. I don't like that. I'm sorry, I'm a perfectionist. And I lost my needle. Okay. So for me, the easiest way to measure my string was to go around 2 times, because we're making 4 ribs. You can make 4, 6, however many ribs you want. Just play around with it. But like, I'm going to wrap this around because it's going to have a rib on each side, and then again for the sides. So I'm going to wrap it around. Now, just to make sure that I have enough, I'm going to wrap it one more time. We'll just do an extra one just to make sure I have enough string. All right. I guess for tutorial reasons, it's probably good that I made the hole a little too big for my liking. Because we're going to have to get our fingers in here. And if you can think of another way to do this, by all means, go ahead. But this is just what I did with my first pumpkin that I made. So I'm threading my needle. I'm going to stick that in there so I don't lose it. Go ahead and make a big knot in the end of the string again. Okay. Maybe I should have taken a bunch of pictures, but then I would have had to type the description under each picture. So I'll just do it this way. All right, that's a big knot. Now what you want to do is we're going to flip this over, and you see how it's all wrinkled up. You can kind of tell where the ends are of the stitch line. So just kind of lost opposite. Try to find the center of your pumpkin on the bottom. Go ahead and stick your needle in. Don't let go of it. Stick your needle in. Now, stick your fingers in the hole and push down and grab that needle. So see, it's a good thing that I made the hole too big, because I did have a hard time getting my fingers in the first pumpkin I made. Now pull the string all the way out. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go down one side of the pumpkin. I think it's easier if you try to find the end of the seam, the bottom seam. And then, which one did we stick it in? This one. Try to go back through the hole that you made the first time. Are you understanding what I'm doing here? So here's your string that's coming down the side of it. So flip it over and do the same thing. Grab the needle and pull it through. Uh-oh. And pull it all the way through. Now, here's the string right here. So I'm going to pull it kind of tight. You can make it as tight or as loose as you want, because, you know, these are the ribs. So you're going to have poofies. So I pulled that through this side. Now I'm going to try to go directly across from it, and then down to the bottom. Stick it through the same hole and grab it inside and pull it all the way. Ooh, string came out. Pull it all the way through the bottom, or up through the top. Okay. Which side did we go on with that? Oh, this side. So pull that kind of tight. And you want to do it a little bit tighter than normal. You could, like, go through the fabric here at the top, you know, around the rim, and so that it holds your ribs so they don't loosen up. But I'm just going to hold mine. Now, we went this way and this way, directly across from it. Now I'm going to do these sides. I'm going to go down the side. I'm trying to keep it pulled tight. Go up through the middle. This is kind of tricky. Grab your string, pull it up, and I think that's where it should have been. Okay, pull kind of tight. Now, I'm going to go directly across from that. Getting fuzzies. Alright, I'm sorry if I pulled that out of the screen. Go down. Go up through the middle. Grab your needle inside and pull up. And pull kind of tight. Okay. So we made little ribbies. Now you can go on and make, 4 more so that you have 8 ribs. But I'm not going to spend that much time. Maybe another pumpkin I'll do like that. So at this point, I'll pull kind of tight. And I'll show you the bottom too. See that kind of, if you wanted to, you could hot glue your stem in here if you like the look of it on this side versus this side. But I think the hole gives you more room to play with, to put your leaves and stem and everything. So, okay. So on this, you're just going to find a place around the rim and just tie some knots in it. But because I made this hole too big for my liking, I'm just going to go around the rim and pull this hole a little bit smaller. See, it's going to pull it together. Then I'm going to go on this side. Grab this. Don't mind this part. Unless you do the same thing that I did and made the hole kind of big. I just think it's a lot easier if the hole is small. Because you don't have to try to fill in the hole. Alright, I think that should do it. That'll give me enough to play with here. So I'm going to knot it off. Okay. You can tuck this string inside the hole also. Now on this you can see my strings, but I'm just going to move them to the sides. And after I put the leaves and stuff on, you won't be able to see them. Excuse me. So I'm going to take one of my my wood pegs, It doesn't. You can use whatever size you want. But see how that kind of goes in snug? That's why I like to make the hole smaller. But I'm actually going to use a wider stem than that. Just because this is a bigger pumpkin. Okay. Clean off the little crummies or whatever that's fallen off of the stick. So just play with it. To get the stem in there. You can use, like I said, you can use a cork, you can use a stick that you find out in your yard. You can make it longer, whatever you want to do. Now, I'm getting it dirty. See, I can't wear white and I can't make white projects without getting it dirty. All right. So, move everything out of the way here. I'm moving. I'll put that over there. Now, back to the burlap. You can use artificial leaves, just anything you want. You can get some raffia and tie it around that stem and make a bow, and that would be cute. Just anything. The sky's the limit at this point. But I have some burlap decorations. My curtains are burlap. My skirt around my kitchen sink is burlap, so I like burlap and lace. So I'm just going to go in. I hope you can see this. Okay. I'm just going to go in and make like a teardrop shape. You can make them as big or as little as you want. You don't have to make a petal. Shape. You can trace a leaf or anything you want. And I'm just showing you my preference. So I do one in lace, and then I personally am going to make two, a little bit bigger than the lace one. And I know this burlap's going to fray, and if you want to spray something on the edges, but I'm not going to be picking my pumpkin up by the stem and messing with, picking it up by the stem or anything. I'll more than likely be holding it on the sides. So we've got, now I'm going to use, if I like the shape of that one, I'm going to use that one as a stencil and cut another one. And after I'm done with this, I'm just going to arrange them the way I want to on the pumpkin, and I will just hot glue it. If you have another way of gluing, you can use fabric glue or anything like that, then you can do it that way. So, oh no, I pulled out my stem. When I'm gluing on the leaves, and it'll also put glue on that stem part. I am just getting this all dirty. I apologize. Okay. So, for this part, I don't want them perfect, like, perfect like that. I mean, that looks good too, and you can do it that way, but I kind of like it off like that. So it looks a little bit more natural, like how it would actually grow. So I guess I'll pick the flawed area, the most flawed area. See, you can see the strings there where I tried to make my hole tighter. See in there? So I'll just put my leaves in that area. And I'll just hot glue them in there. I'm not going to do it right now for time's sake. Hot glue it in there, and then at this point you can be done, or you can tie some raffia around. I had some, I think it was called moss, but it looked like real small, like wood carving curlicue type things. You can make curlicues with twine. The sky's the limit. So I think I'm going to quit for now. Here is my pumpkin. I just love these. I am so glad that I saw a picture of these and got an interest to do them. So, all right. There you go. Everybody that requested a tutorial. And yes, this is long. What is this? 46 minutes. Wow. Okay. So if you enjoyed it and would like to subscribe, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the like button, and feel free to leave comments and let me know what you thought. You guys have a good evening, and until next tutorial, bye-bye.